Hello and welcome to Reviews. As always, I am PlumeNoir and I figured I'd do something a little bit different this year. I figured I'd take a moment and look back at the 5 worst comics of 2019 that I've reviewed. Now, 2019 has not been as bad as some previous years, but the bad ones were, really, really bad. So I have 3 rules for the comics that I'm going to talk about in this retrospective. The first rule is that, obviously, it had to have come out in 2019. Fairly obvious, right? The second rule is that it has to have been a comic that I made a video about. It would not be fair for me to, say, pull out Far Sector or Harley Quinn Breaking Glass, which that one I could not even finish reading. So I'm not going to throw any curveballs at you. It's going to be only comics that I have reviewed. And the third rule is that only one comic per series. Otherwise, it would be the top 5 would be probably Goddess Mode 2 through 6 with Goddess Mode number 1 as a runner-up. So here are the 5 worst comics of 2019 along with 2 runners-up. Our first runner-up is the series Hexwives. Hexwives follows a group of witches as they are put into a 50s-like simulation of being a housewife. Now, these witches have been warring with men for generations. Whereas the witches get reincarnated, the men have to avenge their forefathers. So it's a series with no real good guy. And that's the problem with it, because the series is supposed to be focusing on the women and how they're being abused by being forced into this domesticated life. Now, one can make the argument while reading the series that the men are just acting in self-defense, trying to contain a threat that is trying to kill them. But they're doing it through a combination of magic and science, and not through really good methods. The problem with this series is it actually had, and I said it in my videos, a lot of potential. Neither side was really a good guy, basically, and you can make the argument for either side. Now, they could have gone with having some type of twist to it, such as in the pseudo-marriage, maybe one of the women and one of the guys actually fell in love and defected from their 2 different groups and have like a third party that is actually trying to work toward unification. Unfortunately, the series doesn't do that. It offers no twists, and it is basically plays out like you would expect it to, with the Hexwives ending up victorious in the end and taking down pretty much all the men. This series was really close to being in the top 5, but it was hard to pick a particular issue because it was overall pretty bland, no surprises, and it was by the numbers. Our second runner-up is the series Fearless, a 4-issue limited series focusing on the strong women of Marvel, and the creators were pretty much every woman they could find in the Marvel office, including Sarah down in HR. The series was an anthology. You had the first half of the book dedicated to a story that ran through all 4 issues. The next 8 or so pages was a standalone story, leaving a third standalone story that was only 4 pages long, and then the book would end with creator spotlights. The problem with this is that the imbalance of the stories, it's hard to write a story with only 4 pages to work with. And the stories ran from bad to maybe kind of okay. And the main story that focused throughout the series was really dumb. In fact, it even had Storm of the X-Men wondering what a marshmallow was. So the quality was not very good. This story was so bland. The whole series was bland, and that's why it didn't make it into the top 5 worst comics, because they could have done so much more with this and brought their A game. They had all these strong women of Marvel, and not a lot happens throughout the book. There's very little evidence of the women being shown as badasses. So Just Being Bland was not good enough to make it into the top five worst comics. And the whole reason why they sent her into the gyno room to get a hysterectomy because she was acting. She's obviously past menopause. She's not having periods anymore. Why is she in this camp? Why? Chelsea, do you know how menstruation works? I'm a guy, and sometimes I wonder if I know it better than you. Joking, I'm joking, I'm joking. There's a line in here where the one girl um, threatens the guy. I gotta find it here. Uh, right here. It was on this page. I promise you, if you hurt my doll, I will make you suffer like you were my little brother. But they don't hate men, right? Shut up. The number five spot of the worst comic of 2019 falls upon Maneater's number 10. Now, I kind of thought about maybe going with one of the fill-in issues, such as number 8. But number 10 was really, really bad because Chelsea Kane, the writer, was having problems with the trans community, was lashing out. She was getting a bunch of anger, and I really think the stress of that, coupled with the fact that she was surprised and complaining on Twitter that the book wasn't selling, I think that all came together and made her a little bit crazy. And this issue, I feel, is where the series really went off the rails when Kane realized that she couldn't keep going with the series and she would have to wrap up the pseudo plot that she was kind of following, which was that women, when they have their period due to a mutation in toxoplasmosis, they would end up becoming werepanthers. Not a bad idea, but this turned into a feminist revenge plot, where this issue starts off with Kavanaugh hearings and as well as anti-Trump statements, and then continues on with the pseudo plan in the concentration camp that they're putting women in. And it ends with everyone in the camp climbing a ladder to a girl-shaped dirigible. Yeah, this issue made the top five because it is where she's trying to get the plot together and it just gets kind of crazy. So, Maneaters, it was hard to pick an issue for this. I had that problem with a number of these trying to pick just one issue, but I'm going to have to go with number 10 because Chelsea just kind of lost it. The final issue of the series, where we see that Tom King has taken everything and has put it all together, and it all makes sense. You know, the murder mystery, the mental health, it all comes together, and it, I can't even say it with a straight face. No, it doesn't. No, it does not. All the therapy that he went through at Sanctuary, it didn't do any good. He had to kill people, accidentally, and then wander around for a few days to finally have his, breakthrough moment of clarity. Our number 4 spot goes to Heroes in Crisis number 9. Now, this limited series was actually extended a couple issues, if I recall. I think it was only supposed to be 7 or 8 issues, but they end up adding a couple extra issues to, I don't know, pad out the plot, try and resolve things. The problem with this book is that it was a murder mystery that didn't make any sense. Now, like its spiritual predecessor, Identity Crisis, where there was a murder mystery, the culprit was chosen the entire time. And if you go back through, you could see how Jean Loring would be the murderer, even if it relied on pretty much all the heroes being idiots. This murder mystery, relies upon clues that don't make sense, such as Lagoon Boy being impaled by a harpoon, and relying on the Trinity, Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, just being bad at their jobs. Now, the therapy in this book is also suspect. Whereas Tom King was trying to focus on PTSD, his idea of superhero therapy was to isolate everyone and have them talk to AI. The plot also relies on the culprit, Wally West, displaying powers that he has never displayed before and lashing out in ways that he's never done before. Now, if he had proper therapeutic sessions, this whole series probably never would have happened. And plus, like I said, it relies on the Trinity being idiots. You're telling me that Blue Beetle, long known friend of Booster Gold, who is also a suspect, would not have his pad staked out by Superman? That Booster can just disappear and hang out at Ted Kord's place without anyone thinking to check for him there? It seems like halfway through the series, Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman just gave up on the investigation. And then when you get to the end where they try to use Speed Force clones to make everything fit together, no, it's a bad murder mystery. You cannot figure it out by the clues presented, and it's a bad depiction of how therapy should have been handled. And it was hard to pick an issue. I had this problem with a lot of these, but number 9 is the worst because they try to tell it up and tie everything up in a sloppy way. The one thing keeping it from being higher on the list was it did have some good art throughout the series. Okay. Well, this is actually one of the cleanest covers that we've had so far. And when I say clean, at least it doesn't make the eyes bleed. And the art in this book, as has been in the series, is is garish, and sometimes you can't tell what's going on. This is not the way to do a cyberpunk. You don't just throw every color on the palette on the page. So yeah, they reunite, and I'm so glad you're okay. Me too. Wow, we have so much in common. We should be roommates or something. Because, he's Cassandra's roommate. And then every now and then the monster reminds them that, oh yeah, we're going to destroy the world. She's the Oracle of Trash, and I know I said I wouldn't say anything about Zoe Quinn, but I really feel when I read Cassandra's character, it's Zoe writing herself into this book. The worst comic of 2019, number 3, is Goddess Mode, number 6. What happens when you take an experienced writer, a bad artist, and you rip off video game and anime series? Well, you get Goddess Mode, something that makes both the eyes and the brain bleed. Now, this, as I mentioned in my intro, I probably could have filled up all 5 spots as well as the runner up with every issue of this book. Now, granted, not every issue came out in 2019, so that's one thing in its favor, I suppose. This issue in particular is so bad because it is the end of the series, it's the end of the plot line, and they're trying to tie up everything. But the series focuses on trying to use clever overwriting between the characters where it only makes sense that they would have these conversations if the bad guy creatures just stop attacking and let them chat for a bit. Now, I read this issue a couple times, and I'll be honest, I still did not quite understand what was going on in the book. It was so hard on the eyes, and the writing was so bad that this was supposed to be one of the main Vertigo books. And when you have a couple series such as Safe Sex and Second Coming that ended up not even being printed by Vertigo, and it ended up, you could say, killing the line. I think every book really in the line killed off the Vertigo title, but Goddess Mode number 6, going with that because it is the final issue. We're supposed to wrap everything together, and at the end, I still have no idea what I read. You plan for this kind of thing. I would give this a pass if this were an ongoing series where you plan so much, but you don't know what you're going to write like 2 years down the line, or maybe some other writer wrote that scene, and you're going to take the scene and put in a little, a little bit of information, not quite a retcon, but just, the camera wasn't focusing on this point. You showed this. It's the same writer. It's the same artist, and God, the art's bad sometimes. This did not happen in the scene you showed in the first issue. We're on the first page. We're on the first effing page. And then it gets weird. Barda tries to file a complaint. Okay, I know apocalypse is hell. I know hell is filled with lawyers and HR people. But really, don't think of Earth. Forget any feelings. Push them away. Harden yourself. These aren't tears. My eyes are affected by the smoke, by the new fire pit I am creating. And this horrible, horrible shower scene where it just looks like she's actually thicker without her armor. Somehow. Our second from the top spot of the worst comic of 2019 is Female Fury's number 4. I can sum this up with Apocalypse has an HR department. You see, the writer wanted to write a series about how badly women are treated. And, well, she was given the New Gods characters and had to fit the characters and the story to her theme. And that's one of the problems I've complained about all year. I complained about last year. If you have a theme that you want to go with, that's okay. But don't put it ahead of the plot. Have the plot support the theme, not the other way around. Now, this book was very agenda-based, and again, a combination of sloppy writing and sloppy art made a horrible, horrible series. I chose number 4, not just because of the HR department, but we see right in the opening that she had to retcon the first issue. And that's bad. When you have a 6-issue limited series, same writer, same artist, you should know what you're writing. You should not have to go back and retcon the first issue to show something that there is no way it could have happened in that book. There's no way it could have happened in that scene the way it was shown in the first issue. That's sloppy, sloppy writing. And secondly, the character of Big Barda is changed to be inspired by the death of one of her fellow female Furies so that she can go after scot-free. Now, this is something Gail Simone made her career on by pointing out the original women in refrigerator syndrome, where a woman is killed to inspire a male character. Had Big Barda been, I don't know, Big Bart, this series would have been lambasted for that because it was using the death of a female character to inspire a male character. Sloppy writing, sloppy art. Hopefully this whole thing will be ignored because they tried to make changes to the New Gods canon and characters acted in ways that, well, no one acted in character in the whole series. Maybe scot-free, but no one else in the series. And this is why I say I'm ambivalent about this, because I think it's a genius move, but it shows everything wrong with comics right now. Because it is a short-sighted attempt to try and sell things instead of going with the long term. If you want to have something like this, that to bring in audiences, to preview, bring back Marvel Age. Have a monthly book that showcases upcoming titles. Don't get the reader to pay $10. $10. $10 on this. So yeah, that's why I said I'm ambivalent. This book pissed me off. But I guess it's genius on Marvel's part. Because the comics industry is dying through basically stuff like this. They're bringing in, and I've said it before, all the worst things of the 90s. Now, the number 1 slot for the worst comic of 2019 was actually kind of a surprise. Now, granted, it just came out last week, but I guess Marvel decided to end 2019. What's the opposite of a bang? What's the worst? A self-detonated suicidal explosion? I think that's what they did. Now, maybe you're like me. I still buy DVDs and Blu-rays from time to time. And you know how you get the unskippable trailers before your movie, and you have to sit there and just kind of watch them? Well, what if the entertainment industry decided that they were going to take all those trailers, put them into one DVD, and then sell it to consumers for 250 times the price of a regular movie? That is what this comic is. This comic, well, that analogy is the home video description of this comic. It is a bunch of trailers put into one comic and then charging $10 for it. Now, I wasn't going to put this on the list because, as I said, I just reviewed it last week. But this shows the problems with the industry. This is not just bad writing or bad editorial decision. This was a bad company decision to release a book like this that is just trailers, upcoming events from various creators pretty much across all their books, where they get a couple pages and a narrative that kind of goes through the whole book. You're not getting a decent read. You're just getting trailers. Imagine if you went to the movies and you saw a whole series of trailers before the movie, and they had like one character asking another character in the next trailer what's going to happen next. That's what this book is. It's a bad precedent to send that how the industry looks at the consumers, and I keep suggesting do not buy this. At least with the other books that I've mentioned, you can almost go with the so bad they're good, but they're not good. But at least they're so bad you can check it out and see, what the problems are, as I like to call it, my weeks of pain. This book has no redeeming qualities, and that is why it has taken the #1 spot as the worst comic of 2019, and I'm using the word comic very lightly because I don't think this really even qualifies as a comic beyond the fact that it has art and writers and inks. So that is the top 5 worst comics of 2019, according to me, PlumeNoir. You probably disagree. You're probably saying I left something out on this list, so feel free to let me know what did you think was the worst comic that was released this year. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in 2020.